Hello everyone, Ace here, and today let's talk about the absolute state of Ubisoft. I think it's quite safe to say that Ubisoft hasn't exactly had a very good year this year. What with the absolute disappointment that was the world's first quadruple A game in Skull and Bones, a title that originally was trying to drum up hype, but quickly fell apart when the very intro began screaming about the evils of capitalism, betraying the actual purpose behind the game. Then of course there was Star Wars Outlaws, a game which quickly gained a notorious reputation for being completely broken on launch, and, let's be honest, still unfinished. Though sadly, to be honest, that is at least to some degrees par for the course for the AAA industry in general for the past half-decade. Then of course there is the controversy surrounding Assassin's Creed Shadows, a game with such disastrous PR that it has caused the Japanese government to start investigating it, and that was before Ubisoft announced cutesy collectibles that just so happened to depict monuments associated with the atomic bombings. It's like Ubisoft was actively trying to piss the Japanese off. In fact, things have been going so utterly poorly for this particular title that Assassin's Creed Shadows has actually been pushed back to February of 2025. And when a company like Ubisoft, as desperate as it is right now, decides it's better not to release this game during the holiday season, then that's probably not a very good sign. But if you were to ask the CEO of Ubisoft as to why their company is doing so poorly, well, it would appear to be because good games are just simply not good enough in this day and age. At least that appears to be what's being pushed in this article written by Austin Wood on GamesRadar.com, titled "Making Solid Games Isn't Enough When You Have Gamers Expecting Extraordinary Experiences," Ubisoft CEO says after Star Wars Outlaws. Good ain't good enough, Ubisoft finds. We'll leave aside the fact for a moment that it was Ubisoft who set certain standards and expectations for itself when it began marketing its games as quadruple A games instead of triple A games like every other publisher, because let's face it, doing that would very quickly expose this as being a self-inflicted problem, but I do believe it is self-inflicted in more ways than one, and I also believe I should highlight what the CEO himself actually said, namely, quote, "In today's challenging market and with gamers expecting extraordinary experiences, delivering solid quality is no longer enough. We must strive for excellence in all aspects of our work. This will enable the biggest entry in the Assassin's Creed franchise to fully deliver on its ambition, notably by fulfilling the promise of our dual protagonist adventure with Naoe and Yasuke, bringing two very different gameplay styles." The thing I have to ask is, how long has it been since Ubisoft has released a legitimately good game? Because as far as I'm concerned, the last genuinely good Ubisoft games were Far Cry 5 and arguably Anno 1800, at least if we're not counting remasters. Far Cry 6 itself was very underwhelming in my opinion, and had some glaring technical issues such as the fact that you could actually soft lock yourself very easily right after you got off the tutorial island. With regards to other major Ubisoft franchises, Assassin's Creed's golden age ended with Black Flag, which was released back in 2013, and when it comes to the Ghost Recon games, well, they've, let's face it, been irrelevant ever since they stopped being actual tactical shooters, which would have been all the way back in the early 2010s. And don't even get me started on what they've done to Rainbow Six Siege's plot. And the new Settlers game isn't exactly faring much better either. So I do ultimately have to ask what games the CEO of Ubisoft thinks his company has made within the past 5 years that is actually good, because I'm not exactly seeing any examples here, aside from, again, arguably Anno 1800. So yes, the standards of quality have absolutely been on the decline for quite a while, but of course, game journalists, what with them being constantly in bed with the major publishers, have of course ever diligently thrown out their 7s and 8s as much as possible, regardless of the very real decline. I wouldn't be surprised if the CEO of Ubisoft is at least to some degrees buying into the BS propaganda that he himself is actively trying to facilitate. For you see, these are solid games, no matter the fact that they can't even run half the time when you first buy them. And these are games that are clearly innovative and pushing the boundaries, even though the big selling point of the latest Assassin's Creed game, the idea of having multiple different different play styles with multiple different characters is a feature that was commonplace decades ago. And of course, Ubisoft is clearly hiring the best talent available, despite the fact that the indie market, made up of the kind of people that major publishers won't hire, specifically because they have the wrong skin tone, well, these people in the indie market are able to consistently kick the ass of the AAA market. Something tells me that having a racialized hiring practice does not equate to hiring the best people for the job. Keep in mind, there was once a time when Ubisoft was seen as the envelope pushers within the AAA market, back in 2009 to 2013. It was in this time that they released Assassin's Creed 2, Far Cry 3, and Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. Those were the times when people said that the Assassin's Creed games were the only AAA games worth picking up, alongside Bethesda's Skyrim once it came out, and of course alongside Far Cry 3 once it came out. We have went from that to Ubisoft becoming one of the biggest embarrassments within the absolute embarrassment that has become the AAA industry as a whole. Ubisoft has utterly failed to release good games for years. Their storefront has become an absolute joke that should be avoided if at all possible, and like other mainstream media publishers in general, the company as a whole has been completely infested with propagandists more interested in pushing activism than trying to actually make something that their customers would want to play. Combine all that with the, again, reoccurring issue of corruption within game journalism, resulting in undue praise for games that don't deserve it, resulting in something of a feedback loop with the company buying into its own nonsense, and you have a complete recipe for disaster. A recipe that has been something of a reoccurring theme within the AAA industry for a while, but also particularly egregious in the case of Ubisoft. Frankly, I don't see the company surviving without some massive layoffs, as the only way they're ever going to stay afloat at this point is constantly cutting the fat and ridding themselves of the sheer incompetence that they have previously hired on through DIE initiative policies that can most honestly be described as institutionally racist. Also, to be completely brutally honest, at this point I don't really care if Ubisoft as a company survives or not. Their IPs can just be as easily acquired by someone else, hopefully someone that can do the job better than they can. And I'm far more willing to take a chance on someone new than some utter rank incompetence that are just only going to guarantee failure. It also doesn't help when Ubisoft is the owner of many IPs that I would like to see be brought back, you know, if Ubisoft was actually competent at doing its job, because the simple fact of the matter is that Ubisoft as a company is currently the biggest reason why those IPs are not getting new releases. But don't worry, once again it is very clear that Ubisoft's problems are exclusively because the quote good unquote games that they have made are simply not good enough, and not a result of those quote good unquote games not actually being good in the first place, and Ubisoft essentially tricking itself into thinking otherwise thanks to corrupt journalists telling them that their games are perfect, or at least 7 and 8s out of 10. And it definitely has absolutely nothing at all to do with atrocious hiring practices that do not promote meritocracy at a time when the company's stated goal is achieving excellence in everything. Surely these are not the actual problems causing those so very many woes of Ubisoft, as well as the entertainment industry as a whole. But in any case, this has been Ace. Hope to see you guys again soon. Take care. Ace out.